Welcome to Mental Models Daily, where we explore one mental model each day to help you elevate your daily decision-making. Today, we're examining a fascinating cognitive bias that shapes our perception of reality: availability bias. Availability bias is our tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events based on how easily they come to mind. The more readily we can recall something, the more important or frequent we believe it to be. It's like assuming sharks are a major threat to human life because shark attacks make dramatic headlines, while ignoring the fact that more people die each year from falling coconuts. History provides us with a striking example in the aftermath of the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident in 1979. Despite causing no deaths and minimal environmental impact, this incident dramatically shaped public perception of nuclear power in America. The vivid imagery and extensive media coverage made nuclear disasters seem much more common and likely than they actually are. This availability bias led to a decades-long halt in new nuclear power plant construction in the United States, ironically leading to increased reliance on fossil fuels that cause far more deaths through air pollution. It's like avoiding air travel after hearing about a crash, only to drive instead, a statistically much more dangerous choice. In the modern business world, Zoom's explosive growth during the pandemic demonstrates how availability bias influences market behavior. When COVID-19 hit, everyone could easily recall examples of Zoom meetings, making it seem like the only viable option for remote work. This led many organizations to quickly adopt Zoom, even though numerous other platforms like Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, and WebEx offered similar or better features. The availability of Zoom in people's minds, partly due to its catchy name and widespread media coverage, created a self-reinforcing cycle of adoption. It's like when everyone starts eating at the most visible restaurant in town, not because it's the best, but because it's the first one that comes to mind. Let's explore 3 ways to combat availability bias in our daily lives. First, actively seek out base rates and statistics. When assessing risks or making decisions, look up actual frequencies rather than relying on what easily comes to mind. For instance, before cancelling a trip due to terrorism fears, check the actual statistics about travel safety. It's like using a map instead of relying on the landmarks you happen to remember. Second, create deliberate distance before major decisions. When making important choices, take time to let immediate, vivid examples fade so you can think more clearly. If you're considering a career change after a bad week at work, wait a month to ensure you're not overweighting recent negative experiences. It's like waiting for muddy water to settle before trying to see what's at the bottom. Third, maintain a decision journal. Regularly document your choices and their outcomes to build a personal database of actual results rather than just memorable ones. This helps counter the tendency to remember only dramatic successes or failures. It's like keeping a weather diary instead of only remembering the storms. In conclusion, availability bias reveals how our minds can trick us into misinterpreting reality based on what's most easily remembered. By understanding this tendency, we can consciously work to balance vivid examples with actual data, leading to better decisions. The key is not to ignore memorable events entirely, but to put them in proper perspective alongside less dramatic but equally important information. Thank you for joining me today on Mental Models Daily. Until next time, may your decisions be based on reality, not just recall, and your judgment be clear-eyed rather than clouded by headlines. For more mental models, please visit mentalmodelsdaily.com or find us on X or Instagram. Our podcast music was provided by the Podcast Host.com and Alitu, the podcast maker. Find your own free podcast music over at thepodcasthost.com/freemusic.